I decided to film in the other room for this video and the one coming up. And I filmed this one first because it forced its way into being the most pertinent of the two for me. So, see how this goes. So I know this is primarily pegged as a retro gaming channel, and that's fair. But I wanted to offer my insight on this topic as someone born in the 80s and lived through the 90s and saw what life was like before we had outsourced all of our thoughts and dreams and future to computers. And, well, essentially the function of most of our civilization at this point. Yeah, being addicted to YouTube. Now, of course, a couple things right off the bat. First of all, I'm sure someone will be like, "You're such a hypocrite. You're on YouTube and talking about, it's a bad thing to be addicted to YouTube." It's like, well, yeah, hear me out before you go down that road. But also, because this video is on YouTube, I mentioned that specifically, but the kind of addiction that will get you hooked on YouTube videos is the same kind of addiction that would get you hooked on TikTok videos or Instagram Reels, or, if you wind the clock back, that same kind of addiction would have applied to, legacy cable TV. And when I was coming up with the impromptu, loosey-goosey script for this episode, I was at first going to come to the defense to the degree of cable TV. But then I'm like, wait a minute. If one of the best things you can call like a cultural touchstone for America is cable TV, that's kind of sad. But I will say, at least when things were on a consistent schedule and there was not nearly the same amount of oversaturation of media, at least there was something to be said for, your average person being able to connect to somebody else, a perfect stranger, just by having watched the same show at the same time, especially, So at least there was that somewhat of a shared experience that could, potentially unite more than divide. Even that's gone out the window. But it is the same kind of addiction, right? And it's also, I believe, related to social media addiction in general, because, really, YouTube is a kind of social media platform, and really, as time progresses, it seems like more and more they're all just kind of turning into homogenous blobs that, like, there's less and less differences and nuance between them anyway. But yeah, it's like, what are we on here for? It's like, what gets us hooked? It's chasing that dopamine hit, or that what if, like, what if we find that really interesting obscure bit of information, or you maybe accidentally got some feel-good chemicals, or uh, unintentionally found something that kind of made your day a little bit better, but then you keep chasing that again and again, and before you know it, you've wasted so much of your time, and you've taken on board all of this toxicity and potentially misinformation and intentional agitation, because at the end of the day, these things are not here for the common welfare, or the social good, or the best of humanity. They're here to push metrics. These algorithms and these platforms are designed in such a way to increase the chance of generating ad revenue, increase the odds of selling you something directly, being able to scrape your data for marketing purposes and to sell to shady third parties, or to use something about you just existing, or something you created to train an AI model, which they'll then, use to profit off of and give you none of it. It's plagiarism software, by the way, not AI. There's no such thing as real AI yet. Just, it's all buzzwords. Those of us who have played video games long enough, like, we've been exposed to that term as a buzzword long enough anyway. That goes way back. But, yeah, it's worth just taking a step back and being honest with yourself. Like, I lost, a few hours of my day today because instead of stopping myself, being aware of what was going on, and, like, instead of stopping at, like, I needed this one specific thing on this social media site, instead of getting in, get what I need to get out, I started scrolling. And, these platforms are designed to be addictive and to feed off of any negativity whatsoever, and they don't care about truth. They feed on misinformation. And then these damn things are also physically designed to be addictive. So, someone like me, who has those kinds of tendencies anyway, it's a very dangerous combination, especially when you're feeling vulnerable and really anxious and or depressed at the same time, or just any other kinds of mental battles you might be fighting at that time that make you more vulnerable to these things than you would be if things were more or less ideal with your life, And it's odd when I've reflected. It's like, I know this about myself, yet I never fell prey to the stereotypical addictions like tobacco or gambling or alcohol. And I'm wondering if it's because I didn't really try any of those things until I was at least at or past the age of 25. That's when the brain has more or less finished its development cycle and you've solidified into your adult form. Maybe I had enough physical fortitude and mental hyper awareness of those things to not let them get their hooks in me. Like, who can say? But yeah, it's just, you gotta reach a certain point where if you realize and take stock of how much time you've wasted doom scrolling or allowing, the autoplay or suggestions to just take you down pipelines you really had no intention of going down on YouTube. You gotta just ask, like, what am I trying to get out of this, If it's just a dopamine hit, like, turn everything off and just go outside and take a walk. And, like, every time I've made myself do that, I have felt so much better than any amount of scrolling has ever done. Especially recently with all the political chaos in the United States. I really fell into that trap. And I rationalized it with, like, well, I really need to understand the situation. I need to know what went wrong, what went right. Like, I need to understand different perspectives, different contexts. I need to understand, like, what's going to happen in the short term, what potentially is going to happen in the long term. It's just, I think to a degree, it's perfectly understandable that anytime there's, like, a major upheaval, that, you're trying to make sense of it. You're trying to figure out, like, okay, where am I going to fall in all of this? But, of course, I fell into the trap of, like, oh, wait, now I should probably be unsubscribing from some pages that I should not have been following in the first place. Like, even if I happen to agree with their views, or mostly agree at least, it's like, it's just fanning the flames of hostility and negativity and sometimes misinformation or just things that are really just opinion pieces and aren't really helping me have a better understanding of the big picture. And I don't need any more of that in my life. There's plenty. And then, yeah, it's just being aware of that and being honest with yourself and just admitting that, like, hey, I have a problem. Like, I'm clearly trying to use this to fulfill something that is missing in my life. And it's almost like this technology is only aiding in that purpose of like it's fulfilling our own sense of despair and nihilism. It's like, these tech bros promise all these things like, oh, with this new development or this new breakthrough, you're going to be more connected to people than ever. And I'm finding like the more tech develops and the further along in time we go, like I literally see and hear from most of my friends less now than before we had social media or smartphones or any of those things. And like, maybe some of that is on me. Maybe there's instances where I could have made more of an effort, but the truth is, like, yeah, it's like, even though on paper it should be easier than ever to stay in constant communication with the people that, are supposed to be part of our families and social circles and etc. It's like, no, like, more isolated than ever. I mean, I know for some people that may not be the case, and if so, great. And I understand that technology has made it possible for some people to stay in touch, that otherwise it might not have been possible or would have been very difficult, like if you're living in different countries. I've been there, because that's a nice segue to another reason why I got addicted, and why I wanted to make this video and share it, and hopefully help somebody who's in a similar situation. As I was once living in a different country, and unfortunately, it's because I got married to a narcissistic, manipulative sociopath who wanted to micromanage and control every aspect of my existence. And we were in a rural part of the country. The internet access was very sporadic. It literally could be situations where the wind would blow the wrong way and we'd lose internet access. Like, that's not hyperbole or exaggeration. And it was really scary to be somewhere in pretty deep isolation and to potentially be cut off because of bad weather or bad luck from anyone who actually cared about me, like any of my family and friends back here. And what happened while I was there, because I used to be one of those people that I could go to sleep and no TV, no radio, no game systems running, nothing playing idle in the background, not even like night lights or anything, just maybe a fan or something. And I developed a dependency on videos over there. I would fall asleep to Bob Ross, The Joy of Painting, or Les Stroud, Survivor Man, or just other shows that gave me psychological comfort and helped at least part of my brain escape to a better place, at least enough that I could actually sleep. And of course, I got chided for even doing that because I was chewing up too much bandwidth watching these videos. But I took that home with me even after I got out of that situation. I developed a serious dependency on falling asleep to TV. Even fast forwarding a couple years when I finally, many years late, discovered AVGN and would fall asleep to his stuff, which on one hand is a compliment, I guess. If someone has like a charismatic and relaxing enough presence, even if they're yelling and making horrible fecal matter jokes, that you can fall asleep to it. I guess in a way that's a compliment, but yeah, I think it's like it activated something in my brain that was, maybe it was already there and was just suppressed enough that it never was a factor, but it's like afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of falling asleep and feeling like there's not a comforting presence nearby, Like, at the very least, someone that I was inspired by or looked up to or you know, had a soothing voice and was providing some kind of psychological comfort that I was desperate for. And then during pandemic times, with all this forced social isolation, that got even worse. So I've been forced to take stock and realize, like, no, there's a lot of things that I'm trying to use YouTube as a crutch for that I need to address elsewhere. And you know, maybe you're addicted to videos too, but for different reasons. So I'm just giving my example as one possibility. But yeah, it's not worth it. I mean, if you have enough control of yourself and you can make it work with restrictions, you know, those videos that just do nothing but play like gentle rain or nature, ambient sounds all night, and they don't play any ads, you know, they don't subject you to anything that physiologically is damaging, or psychologically, even if it's subtle, you know? But knowing myself, and if you're similar to me, I think it's best to just acknowledge, like, hey, clearly I'm using this as a band-aid for a big wound elsewhere, and I need to look elsewhere to get the fix I'm looking for. You know, literally going outside and touching grass, which does wonders for me. Like, it does better than any video I can ever watch. Even the ones that are actually of good quality and offer something interesting to think about instead of that slop, you know? Because I'm gonna cast some shade here. Like, let's be honest. Like, the people that just sit there and react to videos and they're just sitting there like, there's a video playing off to the side, and then they've got their chat scrolling, and of course it's filled with, like, stuff coming at you so fast no one person could read it or respond to it all anyway. And it's just slop, you know? Most of YouTube is slop. And that just makes the addiction that much worse if you're just, like, going through all the slop just to tell your brain, like, oh, there's new content that I'm consuming. Like, isn't this great? I always have something new to watch. And it's like, actually, no, it's kind of the equivalent of fast food, but for the brain. It's like, yeah, stuffing your face full of, you know, McDonald's value menu items only goes so far before your body's like, uh, what is wrong with you? What are you doing to me? Get this out of here. At least I would hope. But, you know, America, uh, what can you do? So, hopefully you found that helpful in some way, entertaining in some manner, and again, this is not coming from a place of judgment or thinking that I'm better. Like, in fact, if anything, as much as I want this to help one of you all watching, I also am putting this here as kind of a reminder to myself, like, hey, I made this in a state of awareness and being honest with myself, and at least for the moment, extracting myself from the problem, so I can look back and be reminded, like, oh yeah, in a moment of clarity, I filmed this. So, in remembrance, I will listen to my own advice, hopefully. But again, I appreciate if you made it this far. And again, I hope it's helpful. Be good to yourself. Be good to those close to you. I'll reach out to someone that you haven't talked to in a while. Um, Instead of hoping that, you know, one of these social media sites will algorithmically cause your paths to cross, you know? But stay safe, take care of yourselves and each other, and hope you have a good rest of your weekend. Take care.